You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We know that it's good to be empathetic. We know it's good to care for other people. We mostly try to give the benefit of the doubt to others. We want to care about others. We care about people deeply. We acknowledge people's pains. We acknowledge people's stressors. We acknowledge the issues they're going through. But when does making excuses for others in our life and for ourselves become unhealthy? When does this become unhealthy? And that's what I want to talk about in today's podcast, because I think it's something we don't talk about enough. We don't really talk about it at all. When does it become unhealthy to continue to make excuses for others and ourselves? And how do we understand when it's kind of that gray line or the black line or the horizon line or okay, you've reached a place where it's not a good position to be in. You've reached a place where you're making these excuses and it's no longer healthy. And let's determine that today, because I want to talk about it in perspective of other people, making excuses for other people. I want to talk about it in perspective of making excuses for ourselves and our own actions, and how that gets in the way of us doing things we need to do, or how it gets in the way of us continuing to do things that we shouldn't do. And so we're going to really examine that today, because I think it goes hand in hand. Because I think that the less excuses we give ourselves, for the most part, sometimes the less excuses we give others, but sometimes it can be, from my perspective, doing what I do and the career that I am in, I don't make judgment calls on people. If I made judgment calls on people, I wouldn't be a very good coach at all. I wouldn't be very good at my job and what I do. So I have to dispel judgment on a daily basis. And in that process, that works in session. Theoretically, that's a really great concept in sessions, because I'm looking at it from every angle, understanding the perspective of where people are coming from, walking in their shoes, and understanding different choices, good, bad, and different. However, when it comes to my personal life, my friends, family, coworkers, what have you, often I can obviously not make any judgment, but sometimes in the process of not, making any judgment, a lot of things happen in the process that aren't necessarily healthy. They aren't necessarily good. They aren't actually good for myself or even others. And so we're going to talk about that today, because I think we need to uncover that. I think everybody needs to know where that line of demarcation is, because if we know where the line of demarcation is, we can make sure that we are actually, first off, staying in more of a healthy realm, understanding the truth, because, it's easy to start skewing the truth to make things work for us, or at least we think it's working. But again, we're just hurting ourselves. We're just lying to ourselves, or we're lying to other people, or we're doing both, because most of the time when we lie to ourselves, right, we have to lie to others, because it comes hand in hand. It's part of the deal. If you're lying to yourself, you're lying to others just automatically. And that's one of the things that I think is an ultimate interesting excuse, and I've given it to others. I go, well, I know they're at least lying to themselves, so it's not just me that they're lying to. Okay, that's great. At least I recognize that reality. However, how does that help them? And then how do we bring light into the subject matter? And my biggest thing is that we really got to look at our own backyard first off, because we really can't, kind of like bring light to a subject if we're not bringing light into our own life. So if we're doing things that we're making excuses for our own stuff, and we're doing it on a constant basis, and we're not working to be better, if we sit there and point it out on others, they're probably going to turn around and be like, oh, okay, pot kettle, sure. Okay, well, let me point out what you got going on. Okay, and so I know that everybody's got stuff hidden from their eyesight. Everybody has a set of blinders. Some people's blinders, well, some people got lots of sets. Other people might have one set. Other people might have two sets. Okay, so there's lots of things going on here. Nobody's perfect. No one. Everybody's got some sort of blinder on that's enabling them to do something that's not healthy for them. It's enabling them to continue to, have a pattern of reaction, action, what have you. And in this situation, we have to really realize that, because we all have that within us. And we all probably see it more in other people, so we have to check ourselves first and really analyze that before we check others. But I think this is a really cool conversation today, that it's not about judgment. It's just about getting better than we were yesterday. This isn't a judgment show. We don't really talk about judgment. But it is a show about, let's look at how we really feel. Let's look at what we've been doing in the past, and let's move forward. Okay, so when does making excuses for others... when does that become unhealthy for us? And I think the first warning sign is when you're taking on the blame fully on yourself, when you're blaming just yourself, when you're blaming yourself. When you're blaming yourself for someone else's negative behavior. When you're blaming yourself for someone else's negative behavior. So when somebody else is doing some crazy stuff, out of line, maybe doing drugs, alcohol excessively, going off, yelling, screaming, causing fights, fighting with you, all that stuff, and you start holding on to that, and you start dealing with that, and you start holding on to all that, saying, okay, this is all me. This is all me. I'm the creator of this. I'm the reason why this person's doing this. And you're not at all looking at the fact that this person is a human being that can make decisions for themselves. And so when we take on negative blame, we're also believing that we caused them this pain, that we caused them to do this. That's not healthy. That's very codependent. It's very codependent thinking. It's probably something that you've dealt with in childhood. You probably felt that way around mom or dad, that, when they acted bad, when they acted wrong, when they went out drinking and came home stumbling drunk, or they started fights, you were to blame. And that's normal, because that's what kids do. We assume, okay, well, I'm the one that caused this to happen. I'm the cause for the problem. And that's not it. And so some of this stuff is learned, and a lot of it's learned from our childhood, unfortunately, and a lot of it is learned from our childhood. We take on things we don't need to take on based on the consideration of how our family dynamic was, and that's something that we really need to look at as well, but not that much in today's show, because that would take up at least 5 shows of its own. So think about that. When was the last time you blamed yourself for something someone else did? And sometimes we do have blame. I'm not saying that there's never any blame, that we're always innocent. That is not the case. You really got to look at yourself in these situations and analyze it. However, I think there is a lot of times that we do blame ourselves, and it's not necessarily something we need to be doing. And I think that comes, part and parcel from the fact of our family dynamic. So look at it. Has somebody been nasty, mean, angry, volatile with you, and you've owned it all? You never once thought about what the other person contributed. And that happens. I've been there before, where the first thing you think about is not what they did. It's, oh God, I contributed to this. And then you ruminate in it, and you feel bad about it, and you try to call them, they don't answer the phone, you apologize, and you're apologizing. Yes, everybody has some room to apologize, but you're basically apologizing for everything and allowing this person completely off the hook. And that leads me into a next pattern, and I call this enabling behavior. Enabling behavior is very interesting. When you excuse others and allow someone to engage in harmful behavior without facing any consequences, not taking any responsibility, enabling behavior is one of the worst things we can do. Enabling somebody else to do things that's not good for them is one of the absolute worst things we can do, because, see, the thing is, it's always going to come back to you. It's always going to come back to you. So, for example, you live with somebody that's, pretty much an alcoholic, right? And, you enable them, you allow them to drink, you accept that and all that stuff, even though they need to be going to rehab, but you continue to do it. Eventually, they throw it in your face and say, you're the one that allowed me to drink. You're the one that went to the liquor store. You're drinking too. Look at you. You're no better than me. And so they're going to throw it in your face at some point, but then there's that flip side when you say, hey, you're not going to have any alcohol, we're not going to do that, and they start fighting you. You're a bad person, you're a mean person, you're trying to control me, I can't believe you're doing this to me, I'm a grown adult, I can drink, I can't believe you're doing this to me, you're not allowing me to drink, you're a bad person, you're mean, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You give in. You can't handle it after a couple of days. You go 2 days dealing with it over and over again. You're not drinking because you don't want them to drink. And then you give in because you don't want to hear it anymore. And for like 1 hour, they're actually great to be around. You're like, oh man, they're actually fun and they're cool and they're normal, more normal. And it all flips around again, right? Because they're an alcoholic. The first 2 drinks, anybody's fun. After that, it's not fun anymore when it's 5 a.m. in the morning, somebody's not going to bed because they're still drinking. Okay, but then they can throw it in your face. You're the one that got the alcohol. You were drinking with me, right? So it sucks because there's no middle ground here. You either do it, damned if you do, or damned if you don't. So when we're trying to be talking more about this, because this is a very interesting dynamic that I think a lot of people are going through, a lot of people are experiencing. And we want to make sure that we're living our life as healthy as possible. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And we want to make sure that we're not enabling others. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. It's okay to care for others. It's a good thing. It's a great thing to be able to be empathetic, to care about others' feelings, to care about others' pain. However, there is a demarcation. When is it unhealthy to make excuses for other people, for their behavior, for their actions, for their choices? When is it unhealthy for us to make excuses for our behavior, our decisions, our actions, our choices? This goes hand in hand. We can't just look at other people's actions and choices and discern and judge that if we're not looking at our own. I find that it's interesting, like right before the break, I was talking about enabling behavior. When we enable someone else, we actually do them a complete disservice. And some of you will be like, well, if I don't enable them, I have to hear grief. If I don't enable them and give in, I have to have pain and suffering all day, all night, because they want to drink or they want to do drugs or they want to do this or they want to do that. And so either I give in or I just get yelled at and I go through the process. And that's the determination you have to make about dealing with a relationship like that. Knowing that this person, one, obviously has an addiction problem, has other issues as well. It's a matter of time that you're either going to just fall into the full-on enablement, losing your identity, creating great harm in your own life. Because I found that when you're dealing with either enabling or not enabling, when it becomes that cut and dry, and it's either you do it or you don't, you either get peace or you don't get peace, that's when we're in a relationship that's actually very toxic. And that might be something that you might need to be aware of if you're dealing with a relationship like this. Because if you're in a relationship like this, you're in a very toxic relationship. It's a very challenging relationship. And that's something that we want to definitely understand. 2, enabling behavior. When we enable people to also not do things, like if we enable somebody to not work, if we enable somebody not to get out of bed, if we enable somebody to stay at home and never to drive and to stay at home, if we enable somebody to sleep all day, all these things prevent this person from doing what they need to do. And I know it's almost like the prevention when people are about to hit rock bottom. When people are about to hit rock bottom, many of us enable them, right? We enable them. We keep enabling them to not hit rock bottom, which is absolutely the worst thing we can possibly do, right? And I've been there before where I enabled somebody for a long, long period of time, for several years, thinking I was doing the right thing by them, thinking I was protecting them, and I wasn't. I was doing the exact opposite, and I didn't want to have the argument. I didn't want to have the conflict, and that's another issue. And that kind of jumps into where I want us to talk about now is avoiding conflict. In the avoidance of dealing with conflict, I would allow certain things to happen because I didn't want to have the fight. I didn't want to have the argument. I knew what was going to happen. But inevitably, and I hate to say this, but the more you fight it, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. If somebody is very upset, very angry, if somebody is, avoiding responsibility, if somebody is under the influence of drugs and alcohol, if somebody is abusing pharmaceutical drugs, if there's a combination of all of those and they're avoiding doing, any sort of work, if they're avoiding being a part of society, any of that, and we're not speaking up and saying, hey, you really got to start doing this, or hey, you need to go back to school, or hey, you need to get a job, or hey, you need to do these bare minimum things that you've been saying you're going to do this whole time that you still haven't stepped up to the plate to do. And then we got to look at ourselves, okay? And this enabling and this avoiding conflict, avoiding conflict, wow, conflict's going to show up. Okay, you can avoid it all you want. Good luck, because it's going to still come for you. So why are we enabling somebody to eventually screw themselves over, who eventually screw us over? And it's interesting, when I look back through my life, the few people that I have enabled and then tried not to hit rock bottom and did everything I could for them not to hit rock bottom, they still hit rock bottom. Not bad, not like horrible. Not like some of the stuff you hear. I did help a little bit, but at the same time, they could have started getting help a long time before. Also, I could have been working on my life and focusing on my needs and things I needed to do a long time prior before too, if I would have stopped enabling. The thing is that we get lost in other people's negativity. We get lost in other people's problems. Because it becomes easier for us, because we have problems too. They just might not be as huge of a problem or as apparent as a problem. For example, you have a job, you try to go to work, maybe you get stuff done, maybe you have days you don't, but you show up and you do it. You get out of bed, you take your shower, you take care of your responsibilities, all that stuff. But you got someone over there that you're interacting with on a daily basis that's doing none of that. And so it makes you look like you got everything going on, like you got your life, you got things working for you, but you have to really start analyzing, because you can't judge yourself off that other person's life. You can't judge that. And you also have to look at who are you trying to avoid conflict in your life. And a lot of times when you're trying to avoid conflict, you have somebody, the other person likes conflict. You can't avoid conflict with somebody that likes conflict. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of people out there that love argumentation. There's a lot of people out there that love to fight. That's what they do, okay? They're the Karens. They're the negative Nancys in the world. They're the ones that make life shitty. That's what they do. That's their life. That's like their entire mantra. And you don't know it when you first meet them, because it's not like they tell you that. Most people wear masks, right? It's funny, the fascination with masks in our society, right? Our mask fascination of, people love to wear masks, like at balls and Halloween and Mardi Gras, and the list goes on. Back in in Italy, in Venice, back in the day, when they would wear these masks to these parties and all these sex parties, all this stuff going on. Very interesting dynamic, but people gravitate to masks, and especially if somebody's initially wearing a mask in the beginning of a relationship. And so many of you out there that are married to somebody or been in a long-term relationship, or maybe it's not really been that long, but you see how the mask came off over time. And that can be very alarming and scary, because the person that you thought you were with is really not the person that you're with. That was the version that they were selling you in order for you to get warm and fuzzy and tell them your personal stories and give them all this information about you. So later on, they could use it against you. I call that forever ammunition. If you're dealing with somebody that's using forever ammunition on you, meaning that you did something 5, 10, 2, 3 year ago, and they keep bringing it up in every argument every single day of your life, you'll need to watch that video. Check out my YouTube channel. Go to Life Coach Ashley Burgess. Ashley Burgess, either way, go to YouTube. You'll find my channel. We're almost at 200,000 subscribers right now. And put in the search bar Forever Ammunition. I think it might actually help you to understand the conflict and what's really happening as far as the power dynamic and what they're wanting. Anyway, let's go back to this enabling behavior. So we have to look at it and turn it around on us too. Are we enabling ourselves in any way? And we've all been there before, where it's like, oh no, I don't drink that much. I don't drink that much. A lot of people drink more than I do. And okay, we've all had that conversation. We've all had that conversation, but I mean, it's okay to kind of sit there and minimize, but then there's a part where minimization isn't going to work anymore. So are we enabling ourselves? I mean, some of us might be workaholics, and we work all day. We work late nights, and we're, this is right, this is good. We have to look at that. So it's not always just an addiction of some sort, but, things become that way. Maybe we're buried in our work because we're dealing with conflict in our relationship. Maybe there's some conflict we're not dealing with our family dynamic, and it causes us to bury ourselves in work, or it causes avoidance, or it causes drinking, or it causes, marijuana usage or other drug usage to escape from what we're dealing with. And so it's like really analyzing these types of situations and getting a good read and a good beat on things so that we can actually make some honest decisions about where we are. Now, it really does go both ways, making excuses for others and making excuses for ourselves. And when I return, I'm going to be talking about intellectualizing, because intellectualizing is what a lot of us have a tendency of doing. It can come second nature, depends on how you were raised. And when we do that, we'll talk about all that and how that can also confuse us even more of what we're doing. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing here, and we just need to get a good handle on things. Because the more we understand why we do things and the more we understand what we're actually doing, instead of sugarcoating it or coloring it or acting like it's something else or what have you, that's when we really understand not only where we stand, where other people stand, we understand why we do what we do. All those great things come to pass, makes us a better person, makes us more aware of who we are, okay? So stay tuned. I will be right back. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time, you know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking about when is it unhealthy to be making excuses for others and their actions and their choices and their addictions and what have you. When is it unhealthy? Because, making excuses for people is one thing, giving people the benefit of the doubt, but when does it really get in the way of their growth, our growth, the relationship, the connection, all that? When does it really cause problems? And I found that the first thing that we have to be aware of is enabling others to make poor choices, basically allowing ourselves to be enabled by others, enabling ourselves to do things. Oh, yeah, no, I only had a bottle of wine, Diane had 2 bottles of wine, so I got that going for me. Or, yeah, I'm only taking 1 sleeping pill and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's like, really not like underestimating it, not, basically defining ourselves against someone else that has some sort of major addiction to show that we don't really have that big of a problem. It's just, really just being real, right? And so right before the break, I was talking about intellectualizing and how many of us intellectualize. We explain away the behavior of others using logic and reason versus emotions and all that stuff are totally different. Instead of understanding harmful behavior is harmful, no matter what the reason for it is. So we can rationalize it, we can intellectualize it, but harmful behavior is harmful behavior, no matter what the reason. So it's like, so-and-so's smoking a lot of weed. They're smoking weed all day long. They're constantly smoking weed. They're not sober at any time of the day, but I know that their marriage is really challenging, and, their wife has this issue, that issue, and their job has been really hard, or so-and-so's day drinking now and starting to drink at 7 a.m. in the morning. And, but I know that this is happening, or their mother is old and they're having to take care of her. I mean, yes, that's rationalizing. Yes, they're having to be a caretaker, and the caretaker position is causing a lot of stress in their life. Therefore, they're day drinking scotch, vodka, whatever during the day in the morning. And we're basically rationalizing what they're doing. That's not good. Because when we're rationalizing and intellectualizing, at first it makes sense. Like, hey, they got a lot on their plate and, they're just doing this right now. But a lot of times this type of behavior, it just didn't start right now. It might have revved up, but it didn't start. But also it's like, why are we accepting the fact that this person has to have copious amounts of vodka to deal with their day? I mean, how do we rationalize that? I mean, some of you don't go through way more stress than these people, and you don't even drink. So how do we rationalize bad, poor, unhealthy behavior? But see, it's easy to. Oh, so-and-so had a, it's easy for us to write things off. And I'm not, I'm the first person to say it's very important to respect others and to accept other people's pain and to understand that and to practice empathy. But at the same point, there's a part where we practice empathy, and there's a part where we also lose perspective of what's really healthy, right? So, like, I'll give you a great example. I had a friend of mine that their brother passed away, about a year and a half ago, and love them dearly, but they haven't been the same. And they're doing quite a bit of extracurricular activities, very rarely sober, very challenging to get in touch with. And eventually I'm going to have to say something, and I'm planning on doing that here in the next few days, because there's only so far you can go along and rationalize and intellectualize until, again, you're enabling that person to continue down that path. And I'm not saying that, your decision is that important, or what you feel is the gospel truth. But if you really are a good friend and you really do care about this person, you have to think about that. If you really are a good friend, because think about it, people that you're really not that close to, do you even care what they're doing? I mean, do you even ask them? Do you even think about it? I mean, I don't think about stuff like that. I mean, not that I don't care. It's just something that doesn't come up. And so when you have the ability to have the knowledge of what's really taking place, and you're able to see it, and you're a good friend, and you're supposed to be there for them, you are supposed to at least say something. Because again, to me, it's like in life, if you're given that information, you're given it for a reason. Now, I'm not telling you to go tell everybody else about it. Hell no. I'm saying you have an oath to a friend to say, hey, I'm concerned. And you don't, not in front of other people, not to make them feel bad, but hey, I'm concerned because this is what I've been seeing, and and I don't want you to hide what you're doing. But if I wasn't really there for you, or I didn't really care, or even for your spouse or your significant other, I mean, stepping up to the plate, stop rationalizing, stop intellectualizing, and say, hey, there's some stuff that has, kind of it's made me raise my eye a bit, and I'd like to talk about it. And sometimes people are going to talk with you, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes people will want to change these things, and sometimes they won't. And then it comes to the fact of how long do you stay around and try to work with them while they're fighting you and fighting themselves. And that's the biggest thing is that, because as a friend or as a loved one or as a spouse or a significant other, you don't want to just jump ship. That's just not the way it is. But how long are you going to continue to keep, putting the light out there, talking about the truth and having the conflict and maybe having the arguments and that person fighting with you? It takes a lot of wherewithal to try to continue into that conversation. It takes a lot of depth to keep trying to push that and coming up short. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of dedication and emotional time. And it takes somebody that really, really cares. And there's a lot of people that don't really care. There's a lot of people, it's just too much for them. It's a lot of people, it's like, hey, but I mean, if you've been trying to do this for years with a loved one, a spouse, significant other, and you're getting nowhere, there's time to cut bait. I mean, because that person, they're just going to continue to bring you down. And that's their life choice. If that's their life choice, that's their choice. You can't change that. You can't change what somebody doesn't want you to change. I mean, that's not for yours to change. We can't just sit there and change people's trajectory. Oh, no, I feel like you want to do this in your life. I think you need to do this. I think you would be a better leader than this. I think you should do this. I think you should do that. Well, that's great. That's awesome. But you know what? They're going to say you need to focus on your own life. You need to focus on your own stuff. And that's true. And it's so hard to let that be. It's so hard to turn around and say, you know what? That's so right. If I don't focus on my own life, nobody else will. This person can't even get any of their stuff together, period. How are they going to help me? And if I continue to focus all of my energy on this other person, I am going to completely lose myself. And probably this person's going to also take me completely down because they're not going to change as well. I've realized that you have people in life that are go-getters, motivated, and we go in and out of that motivation sometimes, but you have people that's at their core and people that's not at their core. And if you're trying to make somebody motivated and successful and wanting to do something, and that's not their core, that's not them, that's not who they are at their core, you're going to have a fight. You're going to have a fight on your hands, and that fight's probably not going to go very well. Because it's just, you're trying to change somebody's direction, trajectory. And, I think this is very important for everybody to listen to, because I know that sometimes some people might say, well, man, I mean, this really puts a perspective on my marriage. Well, yeah, it might, but, I mean, are you happy so far throughout all this? Probably not. You've probably been dealing with a lot of negativity, a lot of anger, a lot of crises. Probably have been putting a lot of things on the back burner. Probably not really spending time with people that you have. Probably overlooking a lot of just things you need to do for yourself. You're probably not going to the doctor or taking care of yourself. You're probably not taking care of things that you need to take care of for yourself. And so your health is deteriorating while this other person is taking up the rest of your energy. And so, when we think about it, we have to stop making excuses, especially when it becomes unhealthy. Also, denial is a big thing. And so besides intellectualizing and rationalizing, we have to look at denial. We have to look at denial. Because denying what somebody did, or denying the reason why they did it, or giving that excuse, if they weren't really doing that on purpose, they were just in a bad mood, or they were under the influence, or they haven't slept. All these things are very interesting. I had a client the other day. Why can't, she did that, but that's not her. That's not her. She just hadn't slept, and she was on Adderall. But I mean, this has happened a lot of times, and sure, it might be Adderall fueled. It might be, the no sleep, being up fueled. But again, it's coming out of her mouth. Again, she's doing this. Again, this is her. It's not somebody else. It's her. So it's like when we deny these things, we're also kind of denying our truth, but we're also hurting ourselves. So stay tuned. I'm going to talk more about denial, acceptance, bargaining, and self-blame. So stay tuned. We got a little more coming up. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We're discussing when is it unhealthy to be making excuses for other people's behaviors, choices, addictions, negativity, meanness. At what point does that become unhealthy? And, right before the break, I was talking about, intellectualizing and rationalizing and making reasons for why people do what they do. Oh, they've been having to take care of their mother and, it's got to be stressful. I don't agree with, opening a bottle of vodka at 7 a.m., but, it's stressful times, and that's probably just the way they're handling things. That's not good. Yes, that might be a part of the stress, but that's not the whole reason someone's drinking. And to sit there and also rationalize that this is all based on the fact that his mother's not well, all these things are just it's jeopardizing not only the relationship you have with this person, but also you're enabling this person to continue with this activity. And, it's interesting, I was talking to a client recently and, they said that their significant other, was drinking, at 9 a.m. in the morning, on a Tuesday and all kinds of stuff. And they're like, it wasn't until somebody came by their house that was doing some work for them, made a comment, to my client, hey, is your husband okay? And what do you mean? Well, I just saw him, just downing some scotch in the kitchen. It's in the morning. I just didn't know. And, you start rationalizing all this stuff. You start accepting all this stuff and the stuff that other people kind of look at as, ooh, what's up with that? You're like, oh yeah, and then you kind of start thinking, oh, that's not really good that I'm just accepting that behavior. Thinking it's okay. It's not okay. It's a definite sign that somebody, and we use these excuses. The same thing as that person about the mother that's being sick has probably used that excuse over and over and over again to justify what they're doing. How many times have we justified over drinking based on work? How many times have we justified being in a toxic relationship because we don't want to be alone? How many times have we justified, accepting poor behavior because we don't want to start a fight? How many times have we justified, I don't want to have an argument, I don't have conflict because when I was growing up, I used to have conflict. I don't like conflict now, so I just accept this. Even though what I'm accepting is really piss poor, I'm accepting really crappy behavior, and I'm very upset with it, and it turns me off, and it's a horrible situation, and it makes me upset and angry, and it makes me do bad at work, and it makes me not focus on my stuff, but yet I'm going to continue to do this because I don't like conflict. Yeah, when I was a kid, there was conflict. I don't like that, so I'm just going to avoid conflict at all costs. I don't like conflict. So think about that. So it's like, and then when we talk about denial, so a lot of us invent reasons. We deny the reality of what they're doing. Oh no, I probably saw it wrong, or I probably heard it wrong. I probably overestimated that, or So then we start questioning our memory, or how it happened, or what was said, in an effort to deny. Because we forget what really happened, or we really forget. We just change the narrative in our denial of how bad it really is. Right? How bad it really is. I had a client recently where their significant other, broke down the door and all that stuff, and the cops show up, and a month after it all happened, I didn't break down your door. I don't know what you're talking about. I just threw salsa at your door. I didn't break it down. Well, yeah, in the police report, they threw salsa to begin with, then broke the door down, then had an altercation with my client. Okay, but it's like, okay, but what we're telling a narrative, we're creating a false narrative in order to, accept our behavior and not really look at it for the truth. And then another side of the coin is we accept other people's abuse. We accept other people's stuff. We just accept it. Oh, I'm just going to accept it. We all have our issues. And that's fine. There's a little bit of issues we can accept because that's just the way life is. But just global acceptance on somebody that's obviously doing quite a bit of things, it's not necessarily a good idea. It's just like, I'm just going to universally accept. I'm going to accept that because, yep, I want everybody to accept what I'm doing too. And that's part of it too, is that I realize when we're accepting a lot of behavior, we're also probably doing stuff that we don't really want to deal with either. I realize that, when somebody stops drinking and they're with somebody that is over drinking, there's only a period of time that continues until that person that has stopped drinking starts making comments and pointing out how much that other person is over drinking. I mean, when we're all drinking together and everybody and the alcohol is flowing, it's one thing. It might be a big difference between how much one person's drinking versus the other, what have you. But when somebody stops, it takes a little bit of time, but all of a sudden it's like the realization of, I'm not going to keep accepting that. I was accepting that because I didn't want personal judgment on my own about me from that person. And I also didn't want to judge myself. But now I'm looking at the situation with a little more clarity. But also, it's like, okay, so I've realized that when we accept all these kind of things, it could be because we just love people, and I have a tendency of accepting people because I don't want to judge it. But there's sometimes that we have to not just accept, and we got to just bring it up. We have to see it, at least acknowledge the truth. At least acknowledging the fact that the truth is X, Y, Z. And that's super important. A couple of things I want to talk about, before the end of today's podcast is bargaining. A lot of us are in relationships where you're finding yourself bargaining with that person in your relationship, trying to bargain. You're trying to convince them to stay around. Maybe many of y'all are, dealing with somebody that's constantly saying they're going to divorce you, leave you. Maybe many of you have been in a relationship for 10 to 15 years. Your wife keeps saying that kind of stuff. It really hurts you. So you keep doing more and more and more and more, but more never changes anything. It just keeps the same. It's the same status quo. No matter how much you do, even if there's a little short reprieve of a day or two, it's still not good enough. And you got to start looking at yourself in the mirror and realizing it's not about you that's not good enough. It's them that's not good enough for themselves. And they're just making everybody else's life a living hell. Because that's what they want. They want you to be in hell too. And so this bargaining and I had some clients recently that had to cut out their family and their significant other wanted them to cut out their kids from a previous marriage. It's like, whoa, you really got to start looking at yourself and analyzing what you're accepting in your life. And if you start bargaining with those type of chips, you're gone. You're going to be very lost, and it's going to take a lot of time to pick up the pieces later on the road. Because that person will leave you in destitute. And it's interesting because the reason why they do that is now they've taken away everything, and now they can really bully you and beat you down. But see, people don't realize that. They think that they're bargaining with them and they're going to get something out of it, but in reality, they don't get anything out of it. You just lose even more. And those types of people aren't wanting the best for you. And that's one of the big things that I think we need to look at too, is not making excuses. Stop making excuses for people that don't want the best for you. Stop making excuses for people that are using you. Stop making excuses for people that are manipulating you. Oh, they had a terrible childhood. Well, you know how many people I've heard have a terrible childhood in the work that I do? Jesus. You know how many people, come on. Oh, they had this challenge or whatever. Okay, but the fact is that you keep making excuses for their bad behavior. You keep enabling them, and you keep wondering, why is this happening to me? Because you're enabling them. Most people I've met had a bad childhood. About half the clients I work with, there was some sort of abuse, neglect, something. Okay, so you got to take that off the table already. Stop making excuses for people's poor behavior, especially when it brings down your self-esteem, takes away from your self-worth, takes away from your value, takes away from, your peace of mind. All those things are valuable, and you have to be the one to safeguard it. You have to be the one to think about this. You have to be the one to do what you need to do to safeguard you. Nobody's going to safeguard you, especially if you're around somebody that you're enabling or you're accepting their bad behavior or you're bargaining with them. We're already falling short as far as the leadership role is concerned. When you start finding yourself bargaining in a marriage or, in a romantic relationship, that's when that other person is playing you. Because You think that you can convince them, but in reality, it's not about convincing them. They are already upset with themselves. They just want to make you as upset as they are in their own life. And they're going to play with you. They're going to manipulate you. They could be very narcissistic. They could be even malignant narcissistic, where they're taking advantage of you and they're actually getting pleasure from that taking advantage of you. And that's something that we'll have to talk about in upcoming shows, because there's a difference between having a little bit of narcissistic tendencies versus being a complete malignant narcissist, where we have to be very careful of that, because those type of people really do, they will push your buttons. They will try to get you to argue, to fight. And if you're a conflict avoidant, they will run game on you. They will run all over you. They will take advantage of you. They will take advantage of every single piece of you, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially. And so these are the things that we really need to kind of talk about, because this is the real issues that many of us are dealing with. And, please share this with family and friends. Please share this. We're on Apple, Spotify, Spreaker. We're on iHeart. We're on all the places where you hear a podcast. We're here on the radio. We're everywhere. So share this with folks, because if you're dealing with this right now, if you're making excuses for other people's behavior, if you have a friend that's making excuses for other people's behavior, if you have a friend that's making excuses about their own behavior, this is stuff that we all want to share. We need to be enlightened. And the thing is that until we really focus on this and really work on this, we're slaves. We're slaves. We're slaves to the situation, slave to the other person's actions, attitudes, slaves to our own actions and attitudes. We are definitely not a free person. And this is what we need to really focus on. So I hope this show has helped you. If you haven't already, check out the website. Go to ashleyburgess.com. We redid the website. It has a new face. It's got a facelift, a whole body lift, a mommy makeover. I'm just kidding. It's got a whole makeover, and you got to check it out. Also, we have the membership site back up on the website. You can join for free, and we will be doing some live shows from there as well. And we're looking into the technology for that right now, so check that out. And also, if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, we have almost 200,000 subscribers. Come on, jump in. What are you waiting for? We put up new content all week, and it's good stuff. So check it out. Let us know how you're feeling, and write a comment. Let us know what you want to talk about. We'll, if you want a certain type of content talked about, we'll make it possible. We'll definitely work at it and put it up there. So check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, put in Life Coach Ashley Burgess. Hit that subscribe button. It'll let you when new videos come out every day of the week. Talk to you later. Hopefully you've liked this show. We have a new show coming out next week. And Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.